Hello, everyone. This is quite different. Well, welcome to the first virtual alt.net.
Oh my goodness. Sorry, we invited that guy.
Here we go. Richard's gone for the traditional and the 500 mil with Aaron. So you've got the three of us today. Can anyone hear us? Post something in the comments.
And then we just got to wait about 10 seconds for it to arrive. So by the time it arrives, we'll be like, yes, there's comments. Hopefully you're all at home enjoying yourselves, feeling very relaxed, having eaten dinner.
Your own pizza.
All right, so synchronized drinking. Drinking game. Every time we say Corona.
Here we go.
Oh, here they come.
Thank goodness. We thought we might just be talking to each other, which would just be weird on a live stream. Excellent. So Aaron's agreed to come and join us today. You might remember him from earlier fame talking about solar and IoT and Azure. And you have us two, the usual, Richard and James. Though obviously this is our first try of a virtual setup. So we've chosen StreamYard. We gave it a bit of a go. Richard's getting a bit low res, but he'll be back shortly. Here we are.
Richard's glitching the trunking. I was de-resing.
Yeah. No, it's really Richard there. He's not hiding. So this is the first try. So bear with us if we have any technical problems. And Richard is the main presenter, though. So we also have the usual prize giveaway. This time you can send me a message afterwards if you win the prize, but listen closely because we have 2 JetBrains licenses to give away. As usual, they are virtual, so it doesn't really make much difference whether you're there in person or not. So listen, and I'll ask you 2 questions at the end, and you can get any of the JetBrains product, just the things you need during lockdown. So yeah, Richard, anything you want to add? Aaron?
No, it sounds good. No. Shall we get into it?
All right, so I'll hand over to Richard now. I'll make Richard the big face, I think. Let's get rid of us two.
Ooh. Ah ha ha. Wow, there we go. Okay, we're doing it that way. All right, sweet. I'm kind of look, we're playing around with all the different setups. It's great. I will say, just as we run through this, obviously this is a time where there's a lot of uncertainty happening in the world. We don't know what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks, let alone the next few months. Want to make this valuable for you more than anything else. So if you've got questions, you've got comments as we're going along, drop them into the chat and post a message, whatever else. Feel free to ping probably Aaron or James on Twitter because I'm not going to look at the stream while I'm talking, obviously, and they'll bring in any questions at the end as well. But what I want to run through in terms of the deck is probably a few things. One is recently the organisation I was at, we went through a transition where we've gone from in the office to a work from anywhere culture. That we had the luxury, I suppose, if nothing else, of doing that over a period of probably a few months. And there were some things in there that are worth thinking through, but then also what I want to cover is if you've got to change quickly because, guess what, everything's shut and you can't go into the office or whatever else, what that challenge might be you from an organizational perspective, if that's a role you're in, or from an individual perspective in terms of adjusting just to the culture shock of going from an office environment to a home environment, and then pretty much throw it open to questions. So again, as the questions come through, if they're in the chat, Louise, how many times have I rehearsed this? That many. Going through any questions you've got in terms of things you want to understand yourself, some of the challenges, especially the things that we don't normally talk about in IT land, which are things like mental health and some of the stress of actually being in a home environment for more than 40 hours in a day, basically. So let's run through a few things. So 5 months ago, I changed jobs. And I went from consulting land, where I was out in the field and talking to customers all the time, to a head of engineering role at Willow. And joined that org, and it was very much the classic open plan office we've all been there. You understand some of these things. You'll find there's this get VoIP link that I've got down the bottom there. Talks about, one of those infographics about pitfalls of open plan offices, and we all know they kind of suck in terms of distractions, and you've got all the various stats and everything else that are in there. Working privately is important, but yet at the same time we need to collaborate. So there's kind of this tension between the two. Most people are in open plan offices. You've got loud colleagues that distract you all the time. The challenge of a conversation just to, two people talking right next to your head that don't even realize you're working, or someone who comes up, you're in the zone, they just decide that you're a happy target, so why not talk to you today? Because I'm bored, so you must be here for my entertainment. And these are all these challenges and so forth. And I was like, I suppose I could get used to it again if I have to. But looking at how we work, we already have offices in Sydney, London, Manila, Melbourne, New York, Seattle, Tel Aviv, etc. Plus individual people dotted around the place. As an organisation, we were already distributed. We had this focus of, if you're in a city, you need to be in that city's office, and it just kind of doesn't make sense. So I went, what? I'm in a position where I can kind of do something about this. So I wanted to change it. Not just for selfish reasons, don't tell anyone, but also just to give people more flexibility in terms of how they work. So basically you work best from wherever you work best. Some people work great from home most of the time. Some people want to do a bit of variety. I like doing a bit in and a bit out. Other people like being in the office because their home environment isn't the best and so forth. So we started making the transition. And that for us kind of worked through in a few ways. One of the things I worked through with people in terms of educating them was, because you have to kind of go through this process, educate people in terms of what's going on, why the change and so forth, but pointing them to things and getting their head in the right space. So how do we talk through looking at what others have done without just copying what others have done? So I can't look at GitHub, for example, where people are working remote all the time and go, I'm going to do what they do, because they're built to their culture over time. We had a very different culture. We've had to change gradually. If you bring on too much change too quickly, as some of you are probably experiencing at the moment, it can be quite disruptive. And so we had to I wanted to make sure we took this through and work through things from basically first principles, this idea of what's important, why are we doing it, and then what's the reason behind it, so that it's more a case of the need drives the implementation rather than the implementation is copied from someone else and we hope it fits the need. Kind of a different mindset. Also, how do we deal with being remote friendly versus remote first? We are not a remote first organization until now, obviously. We wanted to be remote friendly and remote supportive and remote engaging, so that I don't care where you are, you could be a contributor in the team and not feel like you're a second class citizen, which is a challenge. A lot of places who say we let you work from home have to face. Asynchronous communication is really important. It's an absolute mandatory thing. You've got to be able to establish that. And again, office environment where you're used to talking to people all the time, where you can go up and tap someone on the shoulder. You don't have that. How do you replace that? How do you put in tools for that? Being intentional, one of the things that a lot of people forget is that one down the bottom left, make trust a core value. One of the biggest challenges, and that you've got to overcome with people, is how do I know people are going to work if I can't see them, which is kind of weird, because I can be sitting there and being visible the whole day and still do nothing. It's a gift, I know. But you've got to be able to cater for that as well. So that it's not just an approach and a methodology, but it's also an emotional thing that you have to deal with. And encourage people to trust. And if you've got an environment which has been very much micromanaged in particular, Willow wasn't, by the way, but I know other places it tends to happen, then that's a really big challenge. And then the other thing is just don't ignore the downsides of working remotely. It's not as easy as you might think from the initial period. Once you get through that honeymoon part, it becomes a lot harder. Now, I'm not going to recap a lot of what's out there. I will say there is some really, really good information out there in terms of remote work. Zappia's got a guide that's quite well known. Buffer has some of their things that that they've gathered over the years. It's good. Remote Tools has a Corona kit, which I find amusing. GitLab has this massive amount of documentation around how they do things. They're incredibly transparent in terms of how they work and what they do. They're all remote guide. It's amazing. You can get yourself lost in there. Please have a look at those items for a lot more content. It's quite cool. All right, so as I mentioned, how do we do it? Or how do I do it with internally for us? So we talked through the why for us. One of the things I wanted to address was how do we grow as an organization? How do we hire people? If we're constantly hiring out of basically Sydney, we're it's a loser's game. It's great for the individual, but you're constantly competing with everyone else hiring out of the same very small talent pool. When you look around, the world's a big place. There's billions of people out there. Let's go and reach out to the people who don't necessarily have the same opportunities and see who else is out there. So that was part of it. Make sure we talk to people about the value of what we were after, outcomes, hours, not going dark, asynchronous communication, making sure we're not serious, using chat appropriately, which means lots of bad jokes, memes and GIFs and so forth. Remembering we're all remote to someone, working through some, basically tips and tricks. We use Teams, so how do we use Teams effectively? And then having a channel for where we are each day. So how do we provide transparency in what we're doing, where we are, so that people know, are you in the office today? Are you not? All right, then beyond that, so that's a lot of communication, a lot of transmitting of information, as well as listening to people, providing supporting tools, guidance to people. So yes, this is the approach, but how do we make it real from a day-to-day perspective? We had to do things like have a work from anywhere agreement. So in New South Wales, we have to have occupational or workplace health and safety, basically an agreement that your workplace, being your home, is a safe enough environment for the work you're doing. That we've got some wiki content for how to do various things. Where do we communicate? How do we raise issues? FAQs, tooling information. So for us, we use Teams, Azure DevOps, Jira, Confluence, all these various tools for tracking information and collaborating. And then from a personal perspective, actually showing this by example. So, not turning up in the office. What you mean, Richard doesn't have to be here, so that means no one else has to be here. Working through those things and basically showing people that it's okay not to be physically present. And then listening to people's feedback, adjusting practices, conventions as we went. And then experience is the best teacher. Now, turns out that we had, when Corona first came out, we first heard the cases coming out of Wuhan, we had one of our team members over in China at the time. And HR decided it would be a really good idea that anyone who came back and then interacted with anyone in the office, that we should all isolate for a period of time, not realizing that one of our team members had just come back. So our entire product and engineering team basically that afternoon packed up shop, took their laptops, went home and didn't come back for a couple of weeks. It was fantastic. Within our area, because we'd been through this process, it was a learning experience. For some of the office regulars who hadn't yet worked from home and they didn't really get up here or down here that they could work from anywhere, it was a really good learning experience. What they learned out of that is some of the downsides as well, that there's a social connection issue. In an office, you've always got someone you can talk to in office hours. Whereas we had people going, well, I've been at home, I've got a small apartment, there's not a lot of space, I kind of feel like I'm locked in and constrained and I don't get out. I wake up in the morning, I start work on the laptop, and then I finish and I cook myself dinner, and then I go to sleep, and then I wake up the next day and I do it again. It feels like I'm in jail. And some of those challenges are really difficult to handle if you're not ready for it. So making sure you cater for that. What we also did, just to make sure that we did have the social connection, is we basically did coffee o'clock. So 8:30 in the morning, we all jumped on Teams. Some of us were basically showing up on coffee machines. We'd make a coffee or have breakfast and have a bit of a chat to each other and abuse me, abuse each other, and then do a wind down at the end of the day, because it gives us that mental boundary between the workday. When do we start? When do we finish? It's a logical point. You finish the wind down at the end of the day, muck around, have a bit of a game, shoot the breeze, turn the computer off, go home. Oh wait, you're already there. But it helped with that connection and that disconnection as well. That's great if you've got time, but at the moment, no one's got that time. We've all had to jump into it pretty much. So what do you do if you don't have that much time? Well, kind of don't need to communicate the need, it's obvious. So instead, what you need to think about is how do we get stability in the team through a time of transition? And all I can say really is keep communicating. Keep the communication channels as open as possible. Keep talking to people. Pay attention to who's not talking on chat, who's not talking on Slack or whatever else, who's not turning their video on when they have conversations, who's disconnected, because they're the ones that we will easily forget about and the ones that we want to pay attention to and make sure that they're part of what's going on. There's also obviously working effectively from home, making sure you've got decent tooling. Security is a major concern for a lot of organizations. It's a real concern. How do we avoid information leakage and so forth, especially if your environment runs a normal SOE? How does that happen? How do you do remote desktop if you're not really configured for it and no one turns anything on and the security policies are in place that basically stop any of that happening? Do you have your content to support people? You might have to spend a little time knocking something up, even if it's a skeleton, but then you just flush out and then just constantly publish, constantly ask for feedback, constantly broadcast information. Maybe do work at the same time, but you're trying to make sure you're constantly being visible more than anything else. And then have some way for people to ask for help, not just help on how to do things, but help, I just need to talk to someone, I'm kind of stuck. Chat channels are okay, you don't need to make it too formal. Start with what you've got and then progress from there. I'd be interested to know kind of at the end some of the questions that, or the challenges that you've had in terms of this, if your work has done this very quickly, whether this mirrors what you've experienced or if there's other things that are different in your environment. So ask those questions and we'll come back to them. Be clear on how you communicate. For me, the things we wanted to make sure is that we wanted to avoid basically trying to replicate the office over Teams, Zoom, Slack, whatever else. One of the challenges with meetings is that you're really keeping information locked into those people who are there, and you don't have that water cooler or the kitchen catch up that lets conversations spread organically through the organization, which means information that would normally just kind of make its way out unintentionally or osmotically. Ooh, sounds great. That doesn't happen. So how do you then spread information through the org? So avoid those things and try to keep things as open as possible. We want open asynchronous communication channels so that people can do stuff when they need to. At the moment, we've got a lot of people who have to keep their keeping their kids from home from school as well. So how do they do education for them, do their day job, get interrupted by toddlers that they normally don't have to deal with, whatever else, while getting things done? They're going to be, their normal 9 to 5 is no longer a normal 9 to 5. It might now be a 7 in the morning for a period of time, gap in the middle of the day, a bit at lunch when someone's having a sleep, another gap, doing things later into the night to try and get through the normal day while still dealing with everything at home. You're not going to have the same connection all the time. So those knowledge silos, we need to try and make sure they don't happen. And again, from a connection perspective, try and promote the video. Even if you end up looking grainy and you're pixelated and everything else, at least video gives you some form of connection. And then, as I've said, just with video, encourage cameras on in all your synchronous meetings, because body language is just as much a part of communication as tone, as anything else. You know, we don't care how messy your place is. We don't care what's going on behind you too much. You can always blur your backgrounds or do something else and go from there. That said, it's also really important to be considerate of everyone's individual situations. No one has the same life as you, probably just as well. But some people are going to will love an office because they have too many distractions at home and it's hard to get things done, or they've got a problematic family situation, which tends to happen. Their working environment is poor. You know, we were sharing photos of our work environments in our teams today. We got people on like little round tables with a laptop perched on it, and that's their space. Or they basically move between, a table in the kitchen to a lounge, back to a kitchen, back to a lounge. not a lot of us have a great home office environment. So they're going to be working in substandard places. They'll get sore backs. They'll have to take breaks. They might be living by themselves and they just get isolated and lonely. So they would normally prefer an office for that reason, because of the connection again. So understand the challenges, take time with people, talk through the fact that it's okay to feel frustrated at times at this point. And that's not just a management function, that's an everyone function. No matter who you are in the team, make sure you're reaching out to others around you to support them. Because this is, as I mentioned, it's a culture shock we're going through. People start, they go, oh, it's exciting, I get to work from home, and that lasts for about 2 days. And then the challenge hits in. And then we start getting, this is frustrating, and now I'm getting depressed. And we go through that famous curve. Because for us as people, small changes are easy to adapt to, but large changes like we're going through with Corona are difficult. And we're compounding that with the whole social fabric changing in terms of how we work, and the fact that no one can buy toilet paper for whatever reason. And it's this sense of loss of freedom, loss of sporting things for those who like their sports ball, loss of a whole lot of other things, going to the pub and having a drink, going to the shops very easily, congregating together, whatever else. All these things are being ripped away, and we're going to have this period where we're all frustrated and depressed. Wow, this is so dark. And the reality for some of us still hasn't sunk in. It's going to take time. So we need to support each other through that. So keep on top of the things that will make a difference. Over communicate, trust each other, focus on outputs, not the time anyone spends sitting at a desk or the time they're online. Talk to each other, keep the communication open, be patient with the challenges, and we will get through it. It will take time. We're going to have to go through that period because we could be doing this for months. So channels in terms of communication, just to try and bring it back to something a little more concrete. We tend to use chat for the informal point in time conversations, things that it doesn't matter if they scroll off the top of the screen and get lost. Trying to do announcements through something like that when you've got a busy channel where things are constantly scrolling off, it's a pain. So instead, use wikis for those sort of things, put long-lived information in somewhere where everyone can find it. And as for email, I don't know. But the key idea is you should have some source of truth for how you operate, which is something for us. If it's not in the wiki, it's not official. And then use the chat for point-in-time social conversations. All right, so hopefully everyone's okay at the moment. I want to change tack again. So we've talked a little bit about how we made the transition with time, things to think about if we've got a very tight period of time like we're going through, and some of the challenges in terms of the social connections and things that we have to pay attention to. But let's make this next section just about you. So how do we make it work for you? How do you make working from home? So firstly, think about your environment around you. If you're going to do focused work, you need to have a focused space. So, ready for your home equipment checklist? There it is. All right, table and chair. Not a beanbag. Preferably not a kitchen table chair, a dining room chair, which has got wooden, no cushion, fixed back, doesn't let you swivel around or do anything like that. Because you sit on that, you're going to get some numb butt cheeks after a while. You're going to be like, I need to get up. I can't feel my legs anymore. And you're going to be kind of leaning back, and it's not comfortable after a time, and it's not good for you. So then you move to the lounge, and then you're sitting in the lounge, and you're like, yeah, this is great, man. I'm coding here. And then you fall off the lounge, or you try and lift yourself out of the seat later on, and you just like, it's a mess. If you've got a monitor, an external monitor, that's great. You're used to an office for a lot of us where we've got our laptop and then 2 external displays or more. And then you take a laptop home and you now have to work on one single screen, and it's like, I can't handle this. It's so frustrating. I just have to keep tabbing and I can't see everything. If you've got the space, invested in external. Obviously with your laptop as well, you've probably got one of those. If you've only got a desktop at home, you have to connect, obviously, slightly different. But one of the things, obviously, or worth thinking about with any laptop is that the keyboard on a laptop and the trackpad isn't necessarily the best for long-term use, which is why we often in offices have external keyboard and mice. So how do you do that? I've got nice one, which is great. But I've had the benefit of doing this for a while, and I've got my little tools that are here. They're all external. They're just Bluetooth. It's great for me, but your environment, different space constraints, everything else. Think through what works for you in that. If you're trying to do everything off an iPad Pro, good luck. Webcams, external webcams, laptop webcams, it's great. Probably not the Dell Nostril Cam. That's really good. Why Dell decided to put a webcam at keyboard level, I don't know, but not great. Headphones, microphones, do what you can. I've obviously got the microphone built into these headphones, which is sufficient. I probably need to update. The one I used to use for podcasting long ago broke, and I need to get another one. So this is my motivation to do that. And also just think about lighting. One of the challenges in a lot of places is we kind of put our laptops against the window, and then in the middle of the day there's all this bright light coming in, and we're also trying to look at our screen. And it's great if you want to look at the view, maybe not at the moment because it's dark, but when you're doing that in the day, it gives you a bit of eye strain. So you want to try and have a bit of contrast, try and have a darker background if possible, try and avoid lights that are shining in your face, things like that. Anything that will help you get a good, comfortable environment. If you've got aircon control, you can set it to your temperature. So these are all things to think through. And for some reason, my animation kicks in on the second one. That's great. But basically, use what you have. So that top picture there is actually my current environment. You can see I've actually got 3 screens that don't match at all in any way. The one I'm pointing to is on the left in your picture. That's a 24-inch, then I've got a 27-inch, and then I've got an old TV, which is the last one over there with Outlook showing on it. And then I've got my keyboard and mouse, and I've got another machine and whatever else. And it's great for me. And I've got my swivel chair and so forth. I've been doing this for a long time. I've got that ability, and I'm lucky enough to have a space where I can put an old dining room table in there so I can spread out. You might not have that. You might only have, as you can see in the example down the bottom, one of my other colleagues, and yes, they've done backlighting. I know, it's ironic. Small external display, and they've got a little dock for a little mount for their laptop, just so they can work through things. A bit more space constraint, but it works for them. What you don't want is something like this. Ironically, I talked through this in the office, the remote conversation we have as a group on Friday. One of the guys tells me this morning that he actually has to go into the toilet to have team calls at the moment because he keeps getting interrupted by his kids. It's like, well done. Yeah, don't do that. It's probably sure it might be comfortable. We don't want to hear the echo. And this one I kind of always find amusing as well. The idea of fencing off your space just so that people don't keep interrupting. You can have a look online. You'll find all sorts of things that show you different work environments. Yeah, it's pretty funny. But make it work for you. Experiment with the setup until you find something that's right. If that means moving around a bit, changing things up, hey, it's your place. Do what you like. What I would say is once you get through that part, think about your routines. Think about the boundaries, the mental boundaries as well as physical boundaries. Have your daily routine. Do some sort of commute. I'm not saying go down to the train station, stand there, wait for 20 minutes, and go, oh, my train's cancelled, turn around and go home. But just do something so you get outside, do a quick walk around the block if you can, assuming you're allowed to go outside. Just do anything that gives you that separation from I'm at home to I'm now in work mode, which is also things like actually getting dressed into work clothes if that's how you get yourself set each day. Shave, brush your teeth, have a shower. Don't forget personal hygiene. If you're in an environment with family, flatmates, whatever else, have some sort of indicator that says you're available or not. Generally for me, if they see the headphones on, they walk into my space, I go, oh, you must be on a call, and then they wander off. Other things, take breaks, have a proper lunch, not just go to the toaster, put in 2 bits of bread, toast it up and eat it and go, that was a great lunch. And then just do that every day. Have something, a little bit of variety, kind of like you would if you were in an office area. And then stay connected. One one of the worst things you could do, as I mentioned before, is going dark. So for yourself personally, broadcast what you're doing to the others, even if they're not, just do that so that people aren't going to go, I don't know what Richard's doing, therefore I'm going to assume he's doing nothing, which means he must be on Netflix, which means he's probably slacking off. And now as a manager or one of the other colleagues, I'm just going to get frustrated if I don't hear back from you because I think you've forgotten about work. Transmit information so that people aren't having to come to you to find things. They can just look and go, oh, that's where he is, that's what's going on. Stay involved in social channels, video calls for human connection. Now, for us, we've got social channels at work. As you can see, I'm not going to be interested in Movember. That one's a leftover, or other things, but you know, I pay attention to gaming, for example. I don't know why. And dogs, because dogs are funny. But again, it's your environment. We understand you're working from home. It's okay for this sort of thing to happen where people come in the background. It's okay to have bad hair days. Probably not quite that bad, and I would be jealous of anyone with that much hair, by the way. And it's okay also to take the laptop or wherever it is outside and go sit out in the fresh air and have a bit of sun on your face. Work wherever is appropriate for you. And then what's less okay is the flip side of things. So this is part of this idea of mental health. You can see there's a link down the bottom. Really important when we start extending this for a long period of time, which is very likely to happen, that we pay attention to this stuff. The temptation is that because we're working from home, as I said, because we can be flexible with our schedule, that we could go, you know what, we'll just wake up, we'll just do stupid thing and drink some beers and then get to 11 o'clock at night and try and panic and rush through things so that we get some sort of outcome. Not okay. Not okay. Sustainable environment we want to be in. Or the classic things that you've probably seen on The Onion, which is where I grab these pictures from, you know, the idea that we lose our social skills. You've probably seen a bunch of these things. They're funny because they relate to reality. We don't want this happening. Similarly, we don't want this happening as well, where you know, because we're now at home, we don't have that physical break that we've always had when we've had to go to the office and come back. So you now are on top of each other in your household, whatever it happens to be, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you don't create those boundaries and don't create space, this is going to become a bit of a challenge. We don't want that to happen. So final thoughts. Hopefully there's some things in here to think about, and then we'll open up to questions in a minute. But one of the other things that people are now considering is, if we're now doing this kind of globally, does this become the new normal? Does the idea of going back to the office become defunct and we're just going to all work from home now? I don't think that will happen. I think there's still a mix of kind of the flexibility now is probably more what we'll have long term, that you don't need to be in the office. You can work from anywhere. That makes you awesome, regardless of the kind of role, at least in the type of work we're doing. That said, we'll see how it plays out. Society is going to be changed by what's happening at the moment. For the better or for the worse, we'll find out. It is part of the fun. So again, in your particular journey with how things are going with the work from anywhere approach, or the work from home approach is currently happening, again, consider this idea that this is a culture shock to a lot of people. You're going to go through a period where everything's great, then you're going to go through that period where things aren't so great. We will come out the other side. Support each other, be compassionate, understand the different scenarios, think about your environment around you, take those logical breaks, have space, and we will open up to questions. Now, James and Aaron both work from home. James has been doing this for a couple of years now, so he's got plenty of experience. Aaron has been doing it for quite a while as well. So let's have a look and see what's in the questions. James, who's up? Who's actually moderating, James or Aaron? And this is where James actually goes, I need to people back into the video. There we go.
There we go.
We're all back again. Everyone here?
There we go, we're back.
We're all back. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Just grabbing the right bits of the screen. We don't have any questions coming through just yet. Let's see. There's a 10-second delay in the live stream. So if we don't
There's
respond,
lots of comments. Don't get too high though. I don't know what that means.
yeah, it's funny when you don't get the feedback, can't hear what people are saying and stuff when you're talking on this. See,
Well,
go on.
so why don't we ask some questions? You were paying attention, right, James? You do have questions for Richard as well, right?
All right. So what are your any other top tips, Richard, for staying at home?
I don't know, James. I kind of want to turn this around a little bit for you. You've been doing this for a while now. How did you go with the culture shock for yourself?
Yeah, okay. I'm happy to give you. I thought about a little bit what my favorite tips are. So I suppose, yeah, you really need a routine. So whether you got the kids at home and you're doing homeschooling or not, I have the kids at home doing homeschooling, so we've kept pretty much the same routine that we did when we went to school. So basically, get up at the same time, get the kids dressed and not in school uniform, but in normal clothes, but maintain that normal sort of getting up time and going to bed time, because it can shift if you don't watch it, and you end up in a different time zone and kind of with headaches because you haven't had enough sleep. And it's so much better to stick to a standard routine, I think, even if you're at home. I suppose for me, especially having a goal. So I think about either the day before or the next, or sometimes a few days ahead, but sometimes in the morning, just like a couple of goals that I want to get done in the day. So it's not really for me on the length of the day particularly. I mean the number of work hours, but achieving the goal, then I feel satisfied. I've got it done for the day. I've achieved what I want to achieve. And when I look back on it, I can feel like it was a successful day. So that's very important for me. And that's usually some further piece of development or some bit of whatever else. It doesn't have to be development. It could be some sort of email you had to get done to send out to your customers, or whatever else there, or some sort of call with a client, or whatever else that you wanted to achieve during that day.
What's the email again?
Sorry?
What was the email? What is that?
I mean, like, I wrote an email to go out to all our customers. So,
what's an email? I'm just being a smart ass.
Cool. So email's still one of the main ways. And so other things, I use a break time. I think I mentioned in comments already. So 20 minutes, 2-minute break. And I do stretches and talk to people during the break, which can sometimes extend a little bit, but I do shorter periods of work and shorter breaks rather than longer periods of work and longer breaks, because then you can sort out whatever needs to be sorted out. So I try not to interrupt during the the 20-minute work bits, and it also is good for your body because you can get up and move around. What other bits? Okay, so I'd say the outside's really good. I have a garden, which I'm lucky to be able to go outside. So if I have a cup of tea, I go outside and drink a cup of tea outside rather than inside. If I have a phone call that I know is going to be long or even short, I usually try and take it outside so that I can, wander around vaguely while talking to someone, because then you get a bit of sunlight, a bit of fresh air, get out of the house, and it certainly works for me. You're laughing.
Does anyone get the feeling that Aaron's bored?
Let's see. You want to say something? You were behind my Vim window, which has got my comments. Let me see. I'll put it on the other side. All right. Go one last one. And that's go for a run or do some exercise at least a few days a week, preferably out of the house, away from people though. All right, Aaron, your turn.
No, so this is one of the coping mechanisms that I have for working from home, is to see how quickly I can distract someone when they're on a video call. And it could be, so I've got a standing desk, which I'm currently sitting at, but you can raise it up and I can just like vanish off. No, but getting back to this, the actual topic at hand. Someone asked the question about dealing with kids around, and you touched on it, James. And I know, Richard, you've got kids at various ages, but both of you have got kids that are older than probably a lot of people that have avoided working from home for a long time, which is also the situation that I'm in. My oldest is 4.5 and not in primary school yet, so he's still at childcare, and I've got a 2-year-old as well. So that makes for a really interesting challenge for the days that they're not in daycare and planning for the potential that daycares are going to close. So how do we work through that? I'm lucky enough to have a room that I can close the door on. To this is indication that Dad's currently busy and can't play or can't interact with the kids. So I can put that physical barrier up between them and use that as the indicator. That doesn't mean that I don't hear the noise of daddy, 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 and banging on the door. But for that, you've just got to be able to, do that sort of separation and accept that there are going to be tough things dealing with that. But like you said, James, having a routine is really critical for that. So it was easier. Yeah, it was easy before the kids swimming was shut down or the gym class and stuff like that was shut down, where they would have a couple of hours where they would be out at a specific event. So now it's replacing that routine with going out and getting a coffee. So my wife takes the kids to one of the nearby cafes. They'll grab a takeaway coffee and then go play in the park for a little bit. And I try and shuffle the priorities they've got for that day around that sort of thing. So if I know that they're going to be out, or I know that this is when Angus is going to be having his nap, that's when I can focus on something specific that that it can't be interrupted, really. So I do. That's one of the ways I do with it. But also, it's just can I do stuff in the evening so I can take 2 hours out of my day to go and play with the kids? I clocked off from the workday at about 3:30 today, went into the backyard and the kids jumped on the trampoline. We kicked the soccer ball around and stuff like that. And then I jump on the user group tonight, or other nights I've done similar things, but then just I've worked on articles that I'm doing that while throughout the evening, instead of sacrificing the time when they're awake and not being able to play with them or interact with them. I just shift your work hours to make what works for you. I'm in a fortunate situation that working at Microsoft where we're fairly flexible in our team of accepting that we are in a unique situation, but we all work the hours that we need to work to get the stuff done. So if I'm working sort of 8 till 11, then having a long lunch so I can play with Ruben and Angus, or I have lunch with Mel, and then just work later into the evening, then that's how we're designed to be set up. And trying to make the space yours. So that was something that you touched on as well, Richard, that make it, if you're going to be stuck at a desk, you want to make it feel like a desk, not a laundry basket that you family to make sure that you can actually work
table on your lap
for things. You can't see it because if I try and turn the camera around, I've got prams.
Oh, that's awesome!
Over the back, there's the change table, because I'm actually in the nursery, or what was the nursery until Christmas, when we moved Angus out into a proper bed. So I have to remember to empty the nappy bin, because otherwise it has a very unique aroma in the room that I call my office now. But slowly chipping away at that sort of stuff. I have my Lego set up here and a few things like that. A bit more like my space and a bit more. Well, I was going to say professional, and I just showed a bunch of Lego. But it's
Lego behind me as well.
Is that all your uni notes, Richard?
No, some of that's just filing as well. It's exciting things like home loan docs.
Yeah. So make the space yours, and even if it just means that you've got the corner of what is a multi-purpose room, you make that corner your corner, And I tell the boys to not play with the stuff that's on my desk. Because it's a standing desk, I can just lift it out of their reach height. That sort of stuff. To answer the question, I'm drinking beer out of a mug because I live in the inner west and I'm a hipster.
There you go, Tim. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
And if you want some of what Aaron's drinking, you can't have it because it's now gone, right?
Not quite. But you can't have it because you can't come to my house and get any. That would be breaking quarantine. So Richard's asked the question about multi-monitors for laptops. So
yes.
I think the three of us are probably all on laptops. Obviously we saw your setup, Richard. I haven't seen your setup, James, but I'm going to make an assumption you're probably running a laptop.
No, because I've been working for a while. I've got a beautiful big iMac with a huge screen.
Right.
Just a screen, but a big one, so you can put windows across it.
I'll explain my one pretty quickly if you want.
Yep.
So I'll try and hopefully the webcam doesn't do it too blurry, but I've got one of those sitting down there. Just a docking station.
Dell dock.
That's USB-C. So basically I've got, as you can possibly tell, that's a Surface Book 2 sitting there, and then a little Dell XPS there. So one's my personal, one's work. And I can, because they're USB-C, I can just plug into either of them and then get that whole 3 monitors external as well as one display. So effectively I'm running 4 monitors, which is quite cool. So that's my setup. The LG is the nice one. That's the one in the middle, 27-inch and all the usual 4K stuff. That was a nice purchase. That was my Christmas present to myself. But the others are really old.
So my setup, I'm actually a little bit different to what you talked about, Richard, of having the external keyboard and mouse and stuff like that. I haven't used an external keyboard for probably close to 10 years. Because when I was doing consulting work, you would just kind of jump between client and client, and I didn't want to rely on getting or have a setup that I was used to using. I
was consulting.
Yeah, first day as a consultant, you turn up with a laptop bag full of keyboards and mice and all that sort of stuff. So I actually just use the trackpad and the laptop keyboard. But I think a similar setup to you. I got that stacked monitor set. So my Surface Book sits on the desk, and then I have a 27-inch, I think it is, sitting above it. It's not 4K. It's something that's less than that. But I don't know what it is. It was like a cheap Hogan spec.
640 by 320.
Awesome. But I find the stacked monitor setup is the best way for multi-monitor on a laptop. I keep the stuff that I need to focus on in eyeline. So that's going to be the secondary monitor or the big monitor. So that's why you're kind of looking up at me, because the camera's on the laptop looking up. That's where I keep email or a terminal window and stuff like that. But the code that I've got open or web browsers, that's on the primary monitor. When I do have third monitor setups, I don't have one at home, but I have in the past. I actually have the third monitor vertically instead of horizontally, mostly because I find if you've got even if it's 224s, just the horizontal stretch of that is too much to deal with, and constantly if I'm looking at the second screen, I'm kind of looking over here and then I'm turning back like this and getting a really sore neck trying to do that. Whereas you have a big vertical screen, you throw Slack on that or emails or a big Word doc that you're reading, and it's great for large readability.
Yeah, again, it depends on you. I for 24, having it in portrait mode works well, but I find the 27 in portrait mode is too much. I'm like, I feel like I'm front row at the movies.
32-inch widescreen in portrait, and it's well, what's the roof like today?
But again, this is part of working out what works for you in your environment and your personal preferences. There's no right or wrong on this. the USB-C dock, Louise, is I think the Dell 6000. Let me just check my device manager or something. I'll tell you.
I think a dock is probably the next thing that I want to get, because at the moment I've got like the USB-C cable that's coming in, which is powering the monitor, and then I've got my power cable coming in elsewhere. And then I've got the microphone, because I've got an external podcasting mic set up, so then that's going into another USB port. So if I want to like go outside, this is like three things I got to unplug. Whereas I prefer to have a dock. And I think if
this one USB-C is great, it's power, it's everything else. It's so easy.
Well, it's power on anything but a Surface Book.
Yeah, true. D6000 is the one. So the Dell 6000 docking station. That's the one I've got, but play around, see what's working for your machine.
Andrew's
Andrew's question. Shall we deal with that one?
Daily stand-ups. I'll leave you guys.
So we do
work on a Scrum team or like a delivery team.
Yeah. We've got teams in different with people in different time zones as well. We use Teams, as I mentioned before, and the thing we used is an async, basically Scrum tool called Scrum Genius. We played around with a few different options, and then basically use that as a way of just making sure we're transparent with each other in terms of the updates each day and what we're working on and how we're connecting. And then they make sure, because of the time zone difference, we've got people in Sydney and Tanzania and Portugal and UK and wherever else. So once a week, there's a time where everyone gets together for basically the Scrum reviews, planning and so forth. But outside of that, it's a little bit more ad hoc just because the windows are a bit shorter. So they kind of work as asynchronously as possible through that process. And Scrum Genius just does basically it's a bot, asks you questions, you provide your update, it's then transparent to everyone what's going on. So it tends to work pretty well. Team external mics.
Hang on. I'll interject a little bit. Yeah, so with a small team, I'm just usually talking with one other person, so we usually just have a call in the morning, especially at the moment because things are changing so fast. Usually a call just to get across it. And if you've got one big monitor, which is what I have rather than multiple monitors, I use like not a window manager, but something that makes your windows move around with shortcuts and size accordingly. So I can fit like 3 windows next to each other on the one giant monitor. So I use Spectacle on the Mac.
Is that one of those ultra wide ones with like a big wrapper around in it?
It was very expensive at the time. Just when I started to work from home, I bought the best Mac that was available pretty much with the biggest screen. So it's got all the, it's got the camera and mic and everything built into it, a giant screen. It's all just one piece that does pretty much everything you need, a la Apple. You can't even see my hands. Yes, a la Apple. But I've been pretty happy with it.
For us, because we're time zone distributed as well. There's no one in my team in my time zone. I think the closest time zone for me is Nashville. One of my colleagues is in Nashville. I think he's one that's in the closest time zone to me. So I think we get about a 2-hour overlap. So we don't do a daily stand-up because we don't work fast enough. We do a weekly stand-up. It's a Teams video call that is scheduled, and if you can dial in, you can dial in. Otherwise, you post to Teams after before or after, like whenever's convenient for you to throw in. And that's the kind of the asynchronicity that we have to rely on. I know that other teams that are like kind of co-located with me, they do daily ones, but instead of having it as a call, they just have a bot that kicks off a thread in Teams and says, hey, like daily stand-up time, like here's the format, copy and paste and fill in. But yeah, that's I think being aware that you can do it synchronously, but make sure that it's async first is probably like a good mantra, because if you've got someone that has their kids and they're doing homeschooling, or like they maybe can't dial into a 9 a.m. call every day, but they still want to contribute. So if you just have a way that they can throw in their notes or that they can watch the catch up when they can, then that's probably the better option. Yeah, so there was a question on external mics versus integrated mics. I've got an external mic on my desk, mainly because I bought it a while ago for doing video recording and stuff like that. But if I wasn't trying to do actual recording of stuff, I probably would just stick with internal mics, like whether it's in a headset like Richard's using or just your laptop mic, stuff like that. Like they give across a decent enough audio quality that you'll get by for most things that you need to do. The external mic's really useful if you're wanting to take it up that next level, to be able to capture a high quality audio, do better filtering on it. I'm going to order some stuff like maybe a dead cat to go over it to clear up the noise, or a pop filter. I got a shock mount on it, boom arm and things like that. But it's not really needed for general day-to-day sorts of conversations that you're going to have on Teams or Slack or Zoom or Google Hangouts or whatever it might be.
I would suggest with any external mic that you still use headphones of some kind in a call, just because the noise cancelling for a lot of people isn't that great and you get that echo effect. You're talking, you hear someone else talking, or you try and talk, and then because you're talking and there's audio coming out, things get cut off. It's a bit of a challenge. And if you've got an external webcam, so I've got a Logitech 920, I think it is, which is a bit old now, but it's got microphones in it as well, so you can always use that as an external mic. There's different ways of playing around with that stuff. Yeah,
I use my mobile phone one, which actually has got like what I used to use on the phone. So it's got the basically the earplugs built in, which is quite handy. So I mean, in a noisy environment, you can still have a call because it's set up for public transport use. So you've got a mic built in that's near your mouth. You can move around a bit, and you can cut out the extra noise. So, and then people know not to hassle you while you're in the middle of something as well. So that's what works for me. All right, so we're coming to the end of the time. So you got like 3 minutes left.
Oh, is it giveaway time?
Ooh, I must say.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
Did you get any questions on Twitter, by the way?
Let me double check. No, nothing through there.
Cool. I probably should have given away your Twitter handles. Oops.
Yeah, well, I think it's better the comments on the side probably. Any on the experience using this StreamYard tool? Has anyone used better things or worse things? Oh, we are the exception.
Yes, Skype for business.
What's worse? Yeah, come on, let's rag on some other tools.
Yeah, I started, but all right. Let's see. Give it 10 seconds.
All right, do you want to do the questions while we're waiting for the other comments to come through?
It's usually easier to do it because I don't have to moderate and do other things at the same time. I've got a quick question. Let's see. Otherwise, we'll just go for whoever has the first 2 comments gets the licenses.
Oh, that works.
Yeah, all right. First 2 comments gets the licenses. And adjudicate the first comments. Okay, better than Zoom. That's cool.
Thanks, Tim. That wins you a license.
Yeah.
Was that because it was Troy that was presenting, or because it was Zoom?
Oh, be nice.
Shame.
Hi, Troy. Andrew likes Teams more. Actually, I was thinking of using a Teams event for it, but we don't have the right license at work for that.
I suppose for me, the question really to ask on this is, how much do you feel this is that you're losing the interactivity as the attendees to watching the sessions? Because I think that's what you you find is the disconnect when you're watching? Are you at a virtual user group or are you watching a webinar? Like, I think those are kind of the main things that I think people would want to think through when they're like making a call. Like, has this worked or has this not worked? And it's definitely a conversation that we're having in my team at work of how do we support events that are going online, and how do we not make it just feel like you're dialing into a very painful WebEx session that's being presented at you, not that you're a participant in.
Yeah, like, did that stuff work in Zoom? We tested out Zoom to give it a quick go. Actually, me and my family tested it out, and it was okay, but it seemed like everyone had to mute as they came in and stuff. I thought it might have got a bit out of control. So I don't know, has anyone been to a user group where with Zoom?
The classic, could you please go on mute? Could you please go on mute? Could you please? No, we can hear you typing in the background.
Yeah, and then your children come in, etc.
Yeah.
So it sounded a bit difficult for our first foray into the virtual.
Well, the alternative is do we pop it on Twitch instead, because the chats seem to come through a little bit better with Twitch.
Yeah, that's another option. Something that I floated with James as well was that if you're doing a highly technical session and you want people to follow along with code, you could look at Visual Studio Live Share, and just basically you create a live share session that anyone can jump into and like literally follow the code as you're presenting it, rather than like if you're getting degraded video and stuff like that. You capped at 30 users can connect to a live share session, but last week
switching tabs doesn't always come across onto the other editors.
Yeah, but there was the advantage that on at the end of the last week, we launched live share straight through the browser, so you don't actually need to install anything. So it does lower that barrier to entry.
That's nice. Did we get our 2 winners, by the way, James?
No, we've only got one person.
All right. Andrew gets the other one then.
Andrew, you want a license?
Did you say free?
Yeah, we could try putting someone else in the studio if I just send the link across. Let's see what happens.
Oh, geez, that's crazy talk.
Has anyone got anything to say? If so, you can come. I think we can fit like 8 people in this imaginary.
6.
All right, we'll give one to Andrew. Does anyone want to talk about their work from home suggestions and experience? If so, I can bring you in. Just let me know and I'll post you the link. Yeah, the delays are killer.
Yeah. But there's always going to be a delay with streaming anyway, because you've got to go through some sort of encoding process and then push it to the actual distributor.
Let's see.
Louise is going because he's got to go watch My Kitchen Rules. Nice.
All right, we're at the end of the time, I suppose.
I think we're at the end anyway.
Fair enough. Okay, well, thanks everyone for tuning in. I know it's not quite the same as usual, but
virtual clap.
Yeah. Let's see. I prepared an emoticon for Richard. Let me see.
Gosh.
Here we go. Look at this.
Wait, bring it.
The anticipation is killing me.
Oh, there we are.
Oh, look, multiple claps.
All right. Well, thanks everyone, and we'll be back next month, possibly on a different tool, but still virtual.
Thanks everyone. Wait, no,
right,
that's my hands.
Good night.
You have to end the